teacher at Kalvirs Consulting, and this is lesson number 1, number properties. Both rational and irrational numbers are included in the real number set. Rational numbers include both integers and fractions. For instance, a half is a fraction, a third, etc., etc. Integers can be either positive, from positive 1 to infinite, or negative, from infinite to negative 1. 0 is also included in the integer set. However, it isn't considered neither positive or negative. Irrational numbers include all decimals, which can be written as a fraction. For instance, pi, the square root of 2, the square root of 3, etc., etc. Now, answer the following questions. What kind of numbers are included in the natural number set? All positive integers are included in a natural number set. Which of the following numbers can be written as a fraction? The square root of 7 is another example of irrational number. It can be written as a fraction. Which of the following is an irrational number? Of course, the square root of 3, like I said, is an example of an irrational number. Integers are all numbers with no fractional or decimal parts. Now, what kind of integer is number 0? Zero is not a positive integer nor a negative integer. Here we get the positive ones and the negative ones. 0 is a number with no sign. Rules for operations. The sum, difference, and product of two integers will always yield an integer number. And the division of two integers is either an integer or a fraction. It means it's a rational number. Now, for the question in the box. If 4 times x is an integer, is x an integer? So 4 times x equals an unknown value, an unknown integer. Any integer. We don't know which integer is this, z. So x is equal to the unknown value over 4. Now I have another question. Is it possible to know whether a quotient is an integer or not if one of the parts of the division is an unknown value? Of course, we cannot determine that with the information we have. We don't know which value is z. So x can be either an integer or a fraction. Depends on which value z might take. For instance, if z is 2, then x is a fraction. And if z is 4, then x is an integer. But since we don't know which value has z, we cannot know which value is x, or what kind of integer is x. So our answer for the question is, it cannot be determined. We need more information. Even and odds. An even number can be represented as 2 times k, where k is an integer, and an odd number can be represented by 2 times k plus or minus 1, where k is an integer. Remember that 0 is an even integer. Now, rules for even and odd integers. And even plus or minus an even is always even. Odd plus or minus odd is always even as well. And even plus or minus odd is always odd. Now, for multiplications. If at least one factor of the multiplication is an even integer, the product is always even. Now, if no factor of a multiplication is even, what kind of integer is a product? So, if there are no even integers in a multiplication, then the product is always odd. Now, for powers. An even integer with an even power is always even. An even integer with an odd power is always even. An odd integer with an even power is always odd, and an odd integer with an odd power is always odd. Now, rules for divisions. Even over even is either an even integer, an odd integer, or a fraction or decimal. Even over odd might be either an even integer or a fraction. An odd over an even integer is always a fraction. And finally, an odd integer over an odd integer is always odd or a fraction. Now, is it possible to determine whether a quotient is even or odd, or a decimal if the values of the parts of the division are unknown? So, the answer of this question is no, because, for instance, let m and n be both integers. Now, let m, for instance, be an even integer, and let n, for instance, be another even integer. The quotient of m over n is not possible to determine because we don't know the values. For instance, if m was 4 and n was 2, the quotient is an even integer. But what if m is 2 and n is 4? The quotient is a decimal, 0.5. So, it is impossible to determine the quotient of a division if we don't know the numbers, the value of the numbers. Now for the question shown below. If x is an integer number and x to the nth power is even, is x an even number? So according to rules, if the power is even, it means that the base is even as well. Therefore, x must be an even integer. If x and y are integers and x times y squared is a positive odd integer, which of the following must be true? First of all, the problem states that x is an integer and y is an integer as well. Now, x times y, everything squared, is a positive odd integer. According to the sign rules, any positive number squared is always positive, and any negative number squared is always positive. Therefore, number 1, x times y is positive, is false. We cannot determine this information. X times y can be either positive or negative. Now, from number 2, x times y is odd. If an integer squared is odd, according to the rules, then the integer must be odd as well, since odd times odd is always odd. Therefore, number 2 is true. Now, number 3, x plus y is even. If the product of two integers is odd, according to the rules, both of them must be odd, since odd times odd is odd. Therefore, x is odd and y is odd. Now, according to rules, odd plus odd is always even. Therefore, number 3 is true as well. Finally, choice E is correct.